Chapter 1. Sudden escape from the castle, soothing on top of a flying dragon and explaining the situation. Greetings, this is Kamishiro Kanna. 17 years old, coursing through his second year of high school, and like any healthy adolescent boy, I would like a girlfriend. You might consider this sudden, but right now I'm flying across the skies on top of a dragon. By dragon I mean what Japanese would put it as, not a codename that some combat planes might get from time to time, but a creature that has sharp tusks, long neck, hard scales and huge wings on its back. But what is it that the pupils of the eyes are charming like that of a cute creature? What is it? It's certainly too much of a bother to keep enumerating things, as I would like to drift away from reality. My awareness is brought back by this girl who is sitting in front of me. A beauty who resembles works of art, with radiant silver hair which reflects the shining sunlight, with two big blue eyes that could pass as precious stones, nice orderly features, and a gorgeous appearance. She is a beauty which is as if it almost departs from the human race. Is there waiting? Correction, in the first place human is not applicable in this case. It's enough to glimpse at the sharp, long ears that extend from her long hair. Of course they are not fake, as they do tremble from time to time, as if to give evidence of their actual authenticity. Anna. I was just escaping reality for a while again, thinking of what you have been through. That might not be strange at all to the me who was scratching his own head. This girl directed a smile. But more than that, isn't this guy quite the comfortable ride? If there is no issue with the pain in the ass when sitting, one can enjoying a pleasant scenery. Sorry. Since it was summoned so suddenly, there was no chance to arrange something to use as a saddle. Normally, I prepare proper equipment in advance. The first priority was to get away from that situation. Right then, my ass hurting a little is no problem at all. Oh, and the texture is nice to the touch. While rustling a little, I touch the back of the dragon. If one just judges by looking, it would seem as if it's hard, and very hard at that. Like any reptile, it can't possibly be said that it has a smooth skin, and the touch feels slippery like that of a snake. But that's a misunderstanding if one only looks. It's easy to become absorbed in the sensation transmitted by touching it directly. Due to feeling me petting it, the dragon lets out a cute kyonyuu, as if it's the singing voice of a bird. Just how soothing is this? Quite lovely. This guy is a little bit shy to strangers, and not counting me, it really doesn't pay much attention to others. It seems it's attached to you ever since young, for some reason or the other. Animals are quite fond of me. That's a good constitution. Once, there it was this one time where a large amount of cats collided with me as if it was a tidal wave of a tsunami. That's extremely enviable. Eyes of envy are directed at me. It looks like she is a cat lover. In truth, it's not all that nice. Having your whole self covered, and with all of that fur, the body temperature rises a lot. In winter the heat is nice and all, but in summer it can get hot enough that it wouldn't be weird to faint. By the way, here cats are small animals that go for like 30 centime. No, that might not be here. They are for about this big, covered in fur. They have ears like this and walk in 4 legs, and they are quite cute life forms. They exit here. I draw the size of an average cat with my hands, imitate the shape of the ears on my head. At first glance they look like gestures of me screwing around, but this girl puts an earnest face and nods without laughing. There is something like that. I don't think I can give a conclusive opinion without seeing it, but it's mainly a small and cute animal, right? The reason of why I would enact such weird gestures is because I want to make sure that what I recognize as a cat and what she recognizes as a cat are the same exact thing. Dear audience, you might have long realized it already. Probably from the onset where I brought up the word dragon. Or rather, the bit with the beauty with long ears, silver hair, blue eyes might have been decisive. Yes, I'm currently in another world. I'm currently in another world. Since it's important, it might as well be said twice. Oh yeah, this is the Kamishiro Kanna who has been summoned to another world. Thanks for the kyonyuu. Now, if it was just wild ideas that sprouted from an hallucination due to kyonyuu, that would be a joyous thing rather. If I try to say that I wouldn't enjoy any of those kyony-like developments, that would be just a huge lie. To be summoned to another world as a hero, traveling while experiencing encounters with your companions for the sake of opposing the demon lord, which would be the basic standard in heroic fantasy. Even at this age, sometimes I think about stuff like that even if it's just a little. But when it actually happens, it's truly some serious trouble. The 2 dimensions can be entertainment because they stay in the 2 dimensions. When they actually corrode into the 3D world, it doesn't become something you can joke around with, and to fall into that you can joke around with the state of affairs is where I am right now. Well, it's quite true that reality and illusion are different. It was to the point where I was summoned as a hero, the template was fulfilled up to there. After that it became heinous thing after heinous thing. It's actually because it's heinous that I'm going to omit a large chunk of it. The bottom line is that I ended up face to face with this beauty of long silver hair, long ears and blue eyes, whose name is Real Farbao. As you might have realized, she is not from the human race, and I should add that ever since the summoning, she is by far the person who has been the most overflowing with human compassion and warm heart that I have met. There is no room for discussion here. From the get-go it was the very worst. It was by far the worst thing I have experienced in my life. As expected, it is better if I go with a simple explanation of the sequence of events. At first, I was just attending classes in school. Suddenly, I was surrounded by light and summoned to another world. There it was obviously no prior notice while I was entertaining the thought of what to dine today to combat the boredom of being in class. That's too cruel. After being summoned to another world, in front of me who had reached the absolute peak of confusion. At such juncture stood the one who for me at that time became the #1 beauty that I have ever seen in my life. Be as it may, as expected the hero, please save this world. The line popped up. Naturally, if a girl who looks that pretty pledges you with teary eyes, the average guy will let out an immediate "leave it to me" response. Even I at first was about to let out something like "I'll do something about saving this world" out of my mouth. It might be something mysterious, but that line was stopped by that very same beauty even before the words could let my throat as I took a second glance at her. A strong, cold chill ran through my back, a tremendous shiver with an intensity as if liquid nitrogen was poured on me. Right away cold sweat started running through my back. Exactly because I saw that beauty more calmly. And then I realized that dreadful something black that laid in the back of her eyes. And after that, well, several things started from there. Eventually, somehow or the other I was certain that I had to escape from the castle where I was summoned, losing my way in the dungeon. I released Real, who I found was imprisoned there. Deciding to break out together, we somehow managed to leave the castle, and it was at that point that Real summoned a dragon for us to ride, putting a safe end to our escapade. In a way, I could be described as someone with quite the good intuition. When betting on poker or stuff like mahjong, I think I'm strong, and I believe I'm someone sharp towards human sensibilities. But this time it was too much of a large portion. I had never had a sweat as cold as that one. According to what the story went, Real was captured by that beauty and arbitrarily framed. It doesn't matter how innocent she seems at first glance, in the end she was just wicked. Probably, is exactly because she is wicked that she is pretending to be completely innocent, and if that's so then her level of darkness can only be described as completely dyed. A level of wickedness where she decides to make use even of her own beauty, and that just shows how she is too dark in too many ways. Well, what will you do from now on, Kanna? Do you have any objectives? Rather than asking me, I would like to hear the opposite. Just you can tell me what am I supposed to do from now on? No, well, if I'm asked what I would do now. In my case, my current purpose is returning to my hometown for the time being. I could only care about getting away from that super wicked black princess. So I could not spare any pleasure in thinking what to do after escaping. It's just that, if I had stayed in the castle, there is no doubt that it would have turned into something horrible. A hero, brave. Without a doubt a storm full of drama has been unleashed already, and it was a storm full of drama huge enough that they had to call a hero to deal with it. Really, whether you're someone who acts after deep consideration, or if you're someone who haphazardly pushes on, I don't really get which of those you are. In the end I get told that a lot. You get told that a lot? But it's true that I get said that a lot. In case if there is any doubt, Real tone of expression is somewhat male-like, and it's not like she is putting on airs of being a man, but that she comes out as a knight. As if it's a natural consequence of a girl having been raised in an all-male household. Originally when I saw her in jail, she was in thin underwear only and with her hands restrained through a wooden tablet. The moment I saw her, my internal beautiful girl ranking was completely overturned and gained a new first place. The wicked princess? For that one, even when factoring her appearance. Since the contents, which are an absolute worst, are considered, that sends her to the undisputed last place. That's obvious. Changing the subject, Real's appearance is now a light armor that emphasizes mobility and protects only the vital points. She also has a great sword which is about as tall as she is. Those two items were taken away at the time of her arrest, but fortunately were inside the castle and it was possible to recover them. At that time, there it was this chance where I actually had to hold her sword, and just as it looks, it's incredibly heavy. In any event, it's not like they can officially organize a purse party. The two of us don't have any evidence of residence in this country, and they can't afford to reveal that we were there, so to say. You sound really certain of that. Why is that? If in this current time of peace, the large powers get to hear that a hero was called for, that would be the same as telling them prepare for war. Surely the ritual was made in secrecy and behind closed doors. They probably have already thought ahead on where to dispatch you. And at that time, you'll likely be told lies and the lines of the enemy are invaders to get you to act scary. I am a man whose inclination is towards pacifism. Would a man who gives a flying kick to a guard without any moment of doubt ever be described as a pacifist? Pacifism and non-combatant doctrines are actually different things. You should earn your own peace. That's my motto. In my case, I have my own circumstances. There is really plenty to consider. Probably, I was being kept to use as a trump card for diplomacy. I don't like to be reminded of it, but I do hold that much value. Additionally, they also surely had wanted to use me as a deal under the table. This goes without a doubt for this land that has already earned a lot of antipathy from the surrounding countries. Now that I hear it, this is probably a country overflowing with strong ambition. Is it noticeable? Once again I realized that I was really glad that I managed to escape. Chapter 02, crossing the mountain, and one step short of freezing to death. We just ended our rest after flying for 4 hours on that dragon. Then Real directed the dragon towards the foot of the mountain range. I appreciate your efforts. We were saved thanks to you, so please make sure to rest properly. Real tickled the jaw of the dragon to show her appreciation as she spoke before taking some steps of distance. Receiving an animal greeting which sounded like QQ before leaving, on its feet a large magic formation showed up shining in white light, and when its whole body became enshrined in brightness, the dragon's shape became less visible as the brilliance was gradually losing its shine to finally disappear when the radiance of the formation on the ground was completely gone. The order for that is exactly reversed from when she summoned it, implying that the foundation of process might be exactly the same. When I was shown this the first time, I became completely overwhelmed and it went way over my head. It looks like summoning magic consists of calling forth something that was previously contracted by the user. And quite properly, this fantasy world has what is without exceptions the quintessential example of what a fantasy world needs to have, which is the art known as magic. This driving force known as magic is something that everyone needs to take a hold of. It might be easier to understand if you compared it to the energy source from our world known as electricity. Hekushan. Hugging my body down with my own 2 hands, with chattering teeth, I let out some weird sneezing sounds. I can't even imagine how high is the altitude of the mountain we have just crossed now, since the actual top is in fact above the clouds. Would I really have had to climb such a high mountain while on my student uniform? Fortunately it's not. It's coldest right now, and a blessing in disguise is that I can take at least some peace of mind that my uniform is a long-sleeved gakuren. Oops, sorry. A light sign breaks through this open space as Real's fingertip produces a fire, and while pointing her hands in front of her, the flame leaves her finger and flew off through the air. Ah! I'm being healed. Thanks to the newfound heat, he was moved to the point where tears almost fell down. When flying at such height, the normal is to wear something that blocks the cold. At this time of emergency there is no choice but to rely on some fire attribute magic as a replacement. I guess it isn't warm enough? At the time we were gradually increasing the altitude while flying, Real deployed fire magic to surround us as a stopgap measure. It was not perfect, as the wind that could blow through from every direction ended up causing an overwhelming cold. At that time Real's face spelled clearly a deep regret over her own lack of ability to cope with the situation. I have only learned elemental magic up to the bare minimum. I apologize since I forced you to experience strong cold. I can say with confidence, if it wasn't for that fire, I would have long died frozen. My consciousness would have flown far away as simply as that, and I would have ascended to heaven. Speaking of, if I die at this place, I wonder which world's heaven I would have ended up in? Or rather, I wonder why Real doesn't look cold at all. While I truly am not good at elemental magic, endowment magic is something I can take great pride in, and that allowed me to use spells to ward off the cold. This type of magic strong point is defense after all. And then, this is fine since we already earned some days of advantage. From leaving the castle till crossing the mountain, it doesn't matter how fast we project them to catch up. They'll need at least 3 full days even if the pursuers also use a dragon like we did. Even if they try that, there is no dragon that can overcome this mountain so simply. I'll allow myself to boast here, when it comes to classifications, my contracted partner falls into the upper ranks of the dragon species, and for that reason we had quite the advantage in our trip when it came to elevation and speed. Even when it looks so cute and soothing? Even when it looks so cute and soothing. I mentioned something about it previously, But that dragon does not really get attached to people, and this is common for their species. Is common sense that contracts are rare, regardless of the species involved. In other words, Real who managed to achieve such an unusual contract is a remarkable individual. When Real noticed that within my sight some admiration was now mixed in, her cheeks flushed ever so slightly. Well, the fact that it's unusual to achieve means not that it's completely impossible. There are those who have achieved contracts so overwhelming when using me as a reference you can't possibly even touch their feet for the sake of hiding her own embarrassment. She presses the talk towards someone in a higher position, and her unusual hand gestures when losing composure adds a cute side that one would normally not notice, with her usual gallant expression. Let's return to our previous talk. Regardless of how hard our pursuers chase us, there is no inconvenience factor for us if we spend a night in the local village. For any dragon, performing high-speed continuous flight for long periods is not a simple thing, especially if you add human passengers to the mix. Similarly to our current case, 4 hours should be the upper limit. Should I relate this to engines and their gears? The strain when using low speed that requires low power becomes completely different when one uses a high gear with high speed which needs much more power. On one side we have that, but there is that it also looks like the day is about to end. It won't do if we don't secure a place to spend the night. Right now we are close to the outskirts of a village. While crossing through the mountain, the location of a village and its settlement was clearly visible, and we made the dragon land before we got close to the village. This was for the sake of being as less eye-catching as possible. While magic in itself is widespread, summoning magic can be considered in the category of unusual. In the first place, if we go to the village with a dragon in tow, there is basically no other way of gathering more attention than that. If we speak about standing out, don't those ears already are something very noticeable? After that line, her long ears trembled a little at the tip. This won't cause any problem since the shape is different from the elves. While my mother was an elf, I'm only a half-elf. And now that keyword elf has popped up, the second quintessential example of what a fantasy world is meant to be like. Being immersed in the love for the 2D world or not is absolutely irrelevant. Even if you only have a little bit of an otaku in yourself like me or not, the love for cute things will ultimately always win. And when those long ears tremble a little right in front of you, the feeling of wanting to touch them naturally comes. Actual elves are much less numerous than human beings. But whether it's a castle or a castle town, you can still find some if you put your mind into it. In contrast, elves traveling to remote areas like this village would be extremely unusual, even something like traveling through troubadours. The ones that I know from fictional works give the strong impression of always having a lyre or a flute at hand. You know well. That's correct. Elves naturally have a strong awareness for excellence when handling instruments that stems from their very own fingertips. You can always find one passing through town and performing as to earn travel expenses as expected. I don't have such a gift for music. In other words, we are a pair of traveling mercenaries who merely are stopping at the village. Playing that part would be indeed the safest route. I'll have to treat you as an assistant even though I feel bad about it. It's fine like that. I wouldn't feel good if I merely keep receiving assistance here. My gratitude to you who saved me from that place will last for a lifetime. Helping this much is but a simple matter. After being forcefully dragged into this world, certainly having met this woman has been without a doubt the greatest fortune. Exactly mirroring what she says, I myself have the mindset of rewarding her for all which she has done for me. At this moment Real and I were completely unaware of it. And we wouldn't even notice it for a long while after that. The mountain that we had just crossed with the dragon has quite the big significance to this country as a sacred mountain. Simply because Ryul used that elemental magic which is her weak point to produce a little bit of warmth, and the fact that I happened to go through a simple preset mountain path. And lastly, the unique condition that I have been afflicted ever since being summoned to this world. Hekushirg, I want to quickly enter the bath. Rather, are there even baths? Or maybe I have just stated a super luxurious aspiration? If you expect a small-sized one, plenty of houses have. Of course an inn would count with one as well, wuxia. If there is a nice meal and a bath, then I can survive no matter the place. Chapter 3. It's not like I like to pimp. So I joined a mountain search cold. The chill air strikes my skin as my eyebrows keep twitching while being frozen, and the worst of all is this strong gust of wind that lowers the temperature of my body. Are you okay? I can't possibly be okay, but I'll be okay. I feel cold enough as if I'm dying. But I'll be okay. You are rather increasing my anxiety with such lines. It's okay to just keep walking forward. I can still handle it even if we increase the pace more than this. After spurting that lively statement, I further dived my feet on the snowy fields as a show of my intention. It doesn't look like you have that much leeway. Why would you go that far? Towards someone who is my benefactor, covered my lodging and is first and foremost a lady, while that girl is working outside in this weather. I can't possibly lie down comfortably at home. I have no plans of becoming a financially dependent pimp. Pimp is a known term for a guy that gets sustained by a girl without working himself. Greetings, this is Kamishiro Kanna. Presently, I'm enjoying mountain climbing through a frozen slope. That exact mountain range that was previously easily skipped from traveling thanks to the courteous services of Dragonac Airlines. I'm aware that I'm again skipping a lot of important details. But please let me off again by giving out the sequential order for the course of events yet again. After passing the mountain range and descending through its feet, we encountered absolutely no accidents, and we safely got into the neighboring village without any unusual events. The village on itself was quite peaceful. It wasn't any difference from how I imagined any countryside village back in my world. The absolute first thing we did was heading towards the inn and having Ryul book a room. After that she recommended that I enjoy the warmth of a bath. It was a turn for that inexperienced elemental magic that increased the temperature of the water. And even the short interval needed for water to boil felt excruciatingly long for the eye who was in a completely frozen state. Soon I felt honestly bad for being cared for time after time. But please let me get away with it now, since the desire for a bath was simply winning me over, is what I thought as I was diving into the steamy water. I have to say that this is the first time in my life that I ever felt so good when entering the bath. That sensation of having the very core of my soul being surrounded by warmth was so incredible that before realizing it I was spilling tears already. Am I fragile to the point that I can be broken to tears easily? I made sure that I was refreshed after a short dive in the bath, and then I returned to the room. It looks like the structure of this inn is that all of the guest rooms are located on the second floor, while the first one has a large dining room which gives the impression of being quite satisfying for the palate of the local residents. But right now you can't see the image of several customers enjoying the meal in their seats, but rather the sight of a bunch of serious villagers surrounding Ryul's table with an atmosphere which is far from relaxed. I was unsure of adding my presence to that place or not, but once somebody noticed that I was on this floor, their hands stretched and I was dragged towards the place where Ryul was. Oh, Kanna. Was the bath enjoyable? The absolute bester? What sort of circumstance is this? Originally it was the smiling Real who recommended me to enter the bath first, but as expected even I can read the sort of weird air that this place is enshrouded in right now. Apparently, it seems that there is a girl who entered the mountain around noon and hasn't returned yet for mountain. You mean that exceedingly large one? Speaking of mountains, there is no other mountain in the vicinity that goes over the clouds like that one. Why is that? That girl's mother apparently caught a cold recently, and it's well known that among the grass in that mountain there are medicinal herbs. It's easy to see that the girl's purpose was collecting those. Such a thoughtful daughter has to be a good kid. At the moment that bit was mentioned, I remembered the current time. A single glance outside the windows reaffirms that we are already completely into the night. Oi, is totally past the time the sun sets by now. Exactly. It's nighttime already. And the weather becomes rather harsh in that mountain by nightfall, which is why everyone in the village is absolutely clear that they need to return home before the day ends. A girl who absolutely knows this and climbed the mountain hasn't returned by now has surely encountered some sort of mishap then. Doesn't that mean that we can't idle around in this place? We should head out right now. I know that much, but that mountain also has dangerous magical beasts. The fact that they have a nocturnal nature is one of the things that makes the mountain safer during the day. Oi. That's serious stuff. Magical beast, what some would spell as monster, and is the quintessential example number 3 of the world in a fantasy genre. If it's as their definition states, they are dangerous animals, flora and fauna that have this wonderful healthy habit of attacking people. Entering the mountain at night would be suicidal for villagers who have no strength to fight. Hearing the conversation up to this point makes it obvious the villagers can't possibly head out on their own, but rather they want to request the task to this Real present here. Bottom line is, these people are requesting you to find that daughter. Precisely. And what do you think about it? Let's hurry up and save her. I'm looked at as if I said something strange. Did you not listen to what these people said? The outline, it's about how we should hurry so the girl won't be eaten by some monster. Right, that's exactly why we should head out to help as soon as possible. Alright, friendly neighbors of this village. Would you mind lending some clothes strong against cold? Please at least offer that level of cooperation. No, I'm talking about the bit where beast will come attacking. That's why I'm saying that I heard it. In a place where gruesome sights are common, we have a rarity for the season. Today's special consists of delicious village girl and a cooking ingredients sense. So it really is that you are planning on tagging along. You have been strange for a while. Like our setting points at Mercenary Girl Real has been requested by these people to search for that girl and you took on the job. Right? Certainly that's how it went. The actual issue is that I am going alone. What a foolish thing to say. It's settled in stone that I'll be tagging along as well. I really did not want you to say that. The people of this village don't have any relation with you, right? That's no different for you. Yet you are brimming with motivation of helping out, right? That's due to my personal motivations. Well, I really can't neglect the intention of my traveling companion. That's why please listen. Details might as well not matter in this situation. There are things that I also can do and there is also the motivation to do such when it counts. There is no spare time to hesitate since this goes according to Real's will. I'm just going to accompany you to the extent of the power I have. And that's how we return to the beginning. Is way too unlucky that a snowstorm began the moment we started to climb. It's like, we should be worrying that we are not the cause for this weather. There are things that after once said as a joke, they may eventually change to truths. Please remember this for later, or rather, why are you dressed so lightly in this storm? Because I used magic that makes me resistant to cold. This much is enough. Right now I'm wearing quite the fluffy jacket to ward off that cold, while Real is wearing her usual light armor with a simple cloak added in. Just how convenient is that magic? Oi, my speciality only lies in this type of spell, as my elemental attribute magic is not that wonderful. For battle this is the one guy I can rely on, she says that while emphasizing the large sword at her back. Certainly, she was quite amazing. At the time we had to force a way out of the castle. It didn't matter how many guards or knights came swarming. They were all blown away with a single attack from that great sword, and without any single exception. There were plenty of guys with full body armor and or heavy equipment in those ranks. That amount of battle power on a single person wouldn't mean that she is good enough to be selectable in those games that are placed in the Sengoku era? More than that, Kanna, is the part where the herbs grow still further ahead? Just some steps away. With a map in my hands, I check the shape of my surroundings and compare it with what was written to assess the current location. There is a large bag on my back, which is meant to be used to keep that child from the cold. When the village girl set out during the day, apparently she was dressed lightly. Even if she happens to be unharmed, the intense cold of this snowstorm is more than enough to make a person not be able to move. If that happens to be the current situation, Real on her own would have needed to carry the bag in her shoulder, and in the case of beasts showing up she would have needed to fight the monsters with that handicap, which is the reason why I was so adamant about following her. In a dual sense you can say that I'm here for the luggage. Really, to volunteer for luggage duty. Quite the evident reason. And it's because Real understood that such a thing was necessary that you let me tag along, right? Initially, she had the idea of relying on one of the villagers. But after considering it calmly a little, I became the obvious choice. Compared to them, she made the judgment that I'll drag her feet much less. You are also quite soft-hearted. To go this far for a girl you don't know. I'm not entirely moving out of goodwill. There is a profit factor added in, truly. When you began the talk of how much the pay was going to be, the faces of the villagers turned delicate, handling so coldly people that we are not acquainted with. Even if they ask for a refund later, we can't be held punishable. In any event, with one night's stay and several days' worth of food, is only that much what we requested as the completion fee. Seriously, should I put it that you might be someone of high prudence? You are really a man who is hard to judge. Was that praise just now? I wonder. As we were brooding over such conversation in this cold, we steadily approached the specified location, which is towards the place where the medicinal herbs grow. This is the same place that the girl was aiming at, and thus there it might be some sort of trail. Close to 30 minutes after we started our climbing through the mountain, and while it's fully dark, we safely reached our destination. Even when buried in the snowstorm, the thick herbs are in abundance. Now we need to check the surrounding terrain and sort the information we got from the villagers. Chapter 4, Reconfirming the Reality of This World. Looks like several stuff happened. Canine creatures whose fur is between white and gray move around walking on 4 legs. That stare which focuses on us with their bloodshot eyes doesn't show any signs of a warm welcome. Snow wolf is a wolf-shaped magic beast frequently found in cold regions. They tend to band in groups, and normally they habitat more hinterland locations. It looks like a group of them ended up climbing down the mountain. Real calmly pulled out her sword from the sheath and prepared herself as I was provided with an explanation. She keeps great composure in front of the surrounding murderous air, unlike me whose legs are about to give out. Kanna. I will absolutely not leave your side, so no worries. I shout at full lung that miserable statement. Pitiful, isn't it? Well, it beats some lame attempt at acting tough and ending up as the dinner of a pack of wolves. I see. Then they are already close. Real has a bitter smile as she proceeds to leash out sharp slices. With a strong voice she matches the charge of the group of wolves. Say. Momentarily, a surge of intense spirit could be felt as the great sword drew a long angle. The Asian wolf that lunged forward and had his ready to bite jaw wholly open got blown away with its head bisected vertically. Next. Wolves that approach from the side with the intention of using their nails, or wolves that approached in groups straight on with their fangs. All of them were crushed by Real's giant sword. Derya. As each sword swing turned a wolf in a slump of flesh. The constant splashes of blood turned the pure white of the snowy ground crimson. I held down the sound of my nausea as the blood and pieces of flesh splattered everywhere. Even if your opponent is a monster that attacks people, there is no mistake that those are still living organisms. Without minding that, Real surfaced no hesitation, nor didn't give signs of any strong feelings as the bloodbath kept increasing. Her eyes completely focused on the opponent and her hands accurately commanded the sword movement. It doesn't matter how much fiction this world seems to me. For the people residing here, this is reality. For every living creature that has the gift of life, there is without any exception another creature that has no choice but to kill others for the sake of keeping on living. There is not any sin in this, and if I don't want to end up dying, I need to act just like Real has just done. And for that reason, make the choice of burying the enemies in front of you. Right now I'm but a baggage carrier that has absolutely no strength on his own. For the sake of triumphing over this type of dangerous situation, she has deemed necessary power. That's why. It doesn't matter how much you clown with your words or how easily your legs get away. I need to imprint this scene in my eyes. I have still not answered the question she once gave me. What will you do from now on, Kanna? Was it? The answer is the tragic event in front of me. It's obviously not a clear answer. But there is at least one reality that was reconfirmed now. I have to make absolutely sure that I can survive in this other world. The extermination of these magic beasts took roughly 10 minutes. The immediate area has been filled with stashes of corpses from these gray wolves that now smear the snow surface red. At the center of this mess stands Real, coolly using her blue eyes to check her great sword. In contrast, I am here. Even though no enemies remain, my heart still races. A minute was spent as she was making sure that no surrounding enemies were approaching, and only after that, Real allowed herself to breathe in relief. Even I, who was on his toes, strongly pushed out the air accumulated in my lungs after the battle was over. By all means. We are done with that. Returning the sword to her back, I noticed that Real's breaths were not disturbed in the least. I was shown that type of intense, huge battle, and are you telling me that you didn't experience physical agitation in the least? Just what type and just how much of an intense training was drilled into you as to reach that level? I, who was merely watching the performance from the side, am showing signs of fatigue in my shoulders. Rather than being submerged in Oz embrace, I need to regain my composure. Our goal for coming to this mountain is not subjugation of beasts nor the collection of medicinal herbs. At least I have to check the corpses. Oi 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 oi. Wasn't this the place the village girl was supposed to have passed? It's not truly certain that these wolves encountered that daughter at the time she was picking up herbs. However, the possibility is undoubtedly there. It might even be that We should also consider even the worst-case scenario to the me who couldn't but be drawn back a little by this much blood. Real responded with a calm behavior. Her voice was slightly stiff, meaning the idea we had was the same. A bad image of a young girl sinking in a sea of blood came to my mind. I couldn't help but to be still in my own place, biting my own teeth. I forcibly moved those clenched legs with strong steps. Screw it. Oi real. In any event, let's just keep looking. I agree. We split and circled around inside the area where the pile of corpses laid, continuing the search. One after another I kept bumping into the sight of dead wolves. Maybe the next body I find would be a human one? Without being able to push away the dismay in my chest, I desperately continued to search. Just please be safe. She is someone who I don't know the looks nor the name, yet I am wholeheartedly praying for her well-being. Truth be told, I'm not the type that prays much to gods. However, if it's for the sake of someone else being saved, whether it's a god or a devil, I'll gladly pray as much as I can. Suddenly, as I was concentrating on looking for the young girl, I was assailed by a huge gust of wind. The great wind took advantage of me being focused on something that brought negligence towards my feet. I was swept at until my balance was lost. As a bonus, bad luck dictated that the place where my feet had to fail was the place where a descending slope was forming. Awah! Kanna. Real made a swift response to my shriek. But even faster than her, I proceeded to roll down the slope. As my field of vision continued rotating, I could only feel panic and curl my body to reduce the shock. After a few seconds of rotation, my body was struck by a floating sensation. It couldn't be. Was I seriously flung off from the cliff? Despair proceeded to rule my heart. But the next moment I felt a strong impact incoming from below as everything became white. At this time my train of thought returned completely to normal. It looks like something stopped my body. I touch myself thinking of the after effects of the crash. I ended up stopping in a face-up position. Keeping my position, I look at the slope I fell off from. It looks like, due to the fortune of the snow cushion being here, is that I didn't proceed further down. Are you okay, Kanna? There are two declining edges on the cliff that I fell from. Real slides here in a hurry through the other pathway. Without standing up, I made hand gestures to show that I'm safe. While breathing a huge relief, Real grabs my hand and helps me stand up. Seriously, try not to surprise me like that anymore. Though my heart would stop, I'm really sorry. I was too distracted as I was slapping the snow out of my clothes. I directed my eyes to the place I tumbled down from. It can't be possibly seen from the area where the herbs grow due to a blind spot. But a cave happens to be there. Real, who was lured by my sight, also became aware of the cave's existence. Additionally, there is in that place a bag that without a doubt belongs to a person. Quickly opening the bag disclosed that the contents were a bunch of medical herbs which grow on the upper part from here. This can only be without a doubt property of the village girl we are looking for. Probably, while running away from the wolves, she fell here, so that means it might be wishful thinking. But at least the prospects are there. After strongly nodding at each other, we took steps into the cave.